This 2024 NFC North Season Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to Brown downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, what as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf for the touchdown.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Here to get into our fourth division preview for our season player props for the upcoming 2024 NFL season. We'll be talking about the NFC North today on this episode. If you haven't already, done 3 episodes already for the previous divisions, which will be the AFC North, the NFC West, and the AFC West. So, yeah, plenty of time, like I mentioned, to go back and listen to those episodes. But on today's episode, it will be the NFC North. But joining me here to help me break everything down for the NFC North for our season player props, got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's up, Munaf? Excited to jump into, like you said, the NFC North, man. We're getting so much closer. It feels like the more time goes by, like the years in general, the less and less the preseason means. Like it feels like you're seeing players, come up with these injuries and just nagging injuries or season-ending injuries, and then you're watching the fights and teams are getting fined. I'm pretty sure they're just like, man, can we just hurry up and get to the season? And I know as fans and as sports bettors, we're thinking the same exact thing, man. So I'm excited for the season, but also excited to to get into this division. The NFC North should be good this year. I think. Not all of them. We'll break it down, but I do think it's some value out here for sure to be had in this division.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is the division that was obviously dominated, I would say, by the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers, being there for so long before he made his move over to the New York Jets. But, let's not take anything from Jordan Love. I know we'll talk more about the Packers as we progress through this episode here. But you mentioned it, right? The thing about injuries has, I don't want to say derailed things here in this division, but there are some injury concerns for some of those teams. And we can touch on those here at the top before we do get to our player props. So the first one that did pop up was Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs, who has suffered a hamstring injury. Coach Campbell came out and said that he should be fine and ready for week 1. So that's something we'll keep an eye on. Don't think he'll play in the rest of the preseason, and I think they're going to obviously treat it cautiously because, again, there are huge expectations, I guess we could say, this season for the Lions for this upcoming season. So I think that he is going to be fine and he'll be good to go week 1. We teased it a little bit in the last episode when we were wrapping up the AFC North division there, Chris. JJ McCarthy did suffer a torn meniscus. He did have to undergo surgery, and unfortunately for him, his rookie season is going to have to wait till next year. He's going to be out for the entire year for the Minnesota Vikings. I know there was a lot of excitement about JJ McCarthy for the Minnesota Twins, the Minnesota Vikings for this upcoming season here. So right now, it seems like it will be at least the Sam Darnold show for the Minnesota Vikings, and we'll see how that kind of pans out for him. I know we'll talk about him more when we do get into our player props here for this NFC North division. Those are the 2 ones that did stand out to me. Chris, if you want to expand on those, if you have anything for that, and then I'll try to see if there are any more injuries that did pop up for the NFC North here.
No, those are the 2 biggest ones for me, when I was capping and, trying to figure out, we always try to take the injuries into consideration, especially if we feel like there's some value to be had based on, what the injury is, how long of a timetable the player might not be, but might be expected to miss, or who is the player that could benefit the most from, said player being, a little nicked up. Football is it's all about continuity and chemistry, whether, it's wide receiver, quarterback, or, it's running back and quarterback. So, the more time you can be on the field and kind of practice those things without getting nicked up and, suffering any injury, the better off you go into the season. There's also like just a groove that you have to get yourself into as well. We've talked about, I know we've mentioned it a couple of times already on the Propcast, about like teams, they can struggle sometimes with tackling because they're not, going out there and killing each other, during practice. Just, it's a couple of those things, you can definitely want to take into consideration when it comes to, just trying to figure out which player props you want to take. But I do think that, I'm real big on, you want players to not, just kind of be thrust into the action, week one, because now, all the chips are on the line. We saw that last year with Joe Burrow when he went to Cleveland, and we were like, wow, who is this Joe Burrow? We've never seen this one. But remember, he missed the whole preseason, right? We talk about this stuff all the time. So, I automatically think, to more so fade those players that are on the injury list versus wanting to back them when they come back. But we'll talk about it. I didn't see any other ones that were glaring to me, just like you said, Jahmyr Gibbs, and of course, JJ as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just unfortunate for the Minnesota Vikings and JJ McCarthy there. I mean, again, injuries are always part of it, and that's why, I guess for them, it's more precautionary than anything. And I think, it may be the right move to, just have him get that knee right, because they drafted him that high for a reason, and for him to be the future of this the franchise quarterback while they, kind of patch it together for this upcoming season, at least with Sam Darnold.
We did miss one, if I totally forgot about Jordan Addison, carted off the field. Yeah, totally forgot about him. Potential wide receiver 2 behind JJ, Justin Jefferson out in Minnesota. I mean, the injury bug and when you talked about it, you went from JJ McCarthy to Minnesota, and that's when it kind of clicked to me. I mean, they're having the worst luck. And I mean, cornerback going down, it's just a lot going on. Players getting carted off the field. It's a lot going on in Minnesota. So, yeah, they should probably just skip the rest of the preseason, the way things are going right now for them. He was carted off the field yesterday. And, was dealing with I think it's ankle injury. I'm sorry, serious concerns, and he, of course, won't be at practice. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Easy mentioning in the chat what you just mentioned there, that he did leave practice yesterday on a cart, that he should be okay. Seems like all indications are he should be ready to go for week 1 for Jordan Addison in that wide receiving group of the Minnesota Vikings. All right. Let's see. Where do we want to go here? Chris, before we do get into it here, my man, let me just remind everybody of the 32 team previews that the sports gambling podcasts are doing right now. Sean and Ryan, they're going through every single team, going through schedules and all that fun stuff. And they're giving out a $500 Circa futures for listeners. And also the EPL returns. So make sure to check out the Soccer Gambling Podcast and the Premier League Gambling Podcast for all your footy fix. And make sure you guys subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts on the SGPN app. All right, Chris, let's get into it, man. Let's get into our player props here for the AFC North Division. I'll let you lead it off here, man. Where are we going for player prop number 1?
So we're gonna go we start quarterback, and there was a couple of them I wanted to bet. If I think, when I think about this division, I'm interested to get your thoughts on just this landscape as as a theme. But there was a lot of over there was so much overperforming last year with Jordan Love, him throwing 30 plus touchdowns and only 11 interceptions. And, there's a lot of great expectations for Caleb Williams as well. And, we can just kind of go down the line. Maybe not Sam Darnold, but same thing with Detroit and, Jared Goff. These quarterbacks really, exceeded their expectations. So I do think that, you probably want to look towards some unders on some of those guys. But it was difficult for me, It was difficult for me to try to find that under. I really was looking pretty hard. I'm interested to hear what you got to say. But I'll go Caleb Williams here, And it's not the sexiest play, but I'll go over on his passing touchdowns. The number comes in at 21.5. It is a little bit juiced at minus 140 over on Caesars is the best number that I found it where I found it. But super small sample size, of course. But I did watch that preseason game against the Jets. Where they were in on the road in New Jersey, and I love what I saw from him. Of course, there's a lot of hype coming around. Caleb Williams coming in from USC and what he's projected to do and all of those things. But the small intangibles that I took away, like not even just the throw on 3rd and 12 when on the first drive of the game when he got himself in a pretty bad situation and being able to look off 2 of his primary routes, like he checked route number 1, route number 2, neither one of those were there. But I love his command. What I'm reading from the training from out of training camp and some of those beat writers that are covering this team says that he really has control of the team. Like they're listening to him, his voice is loud. And they're following his lead. I love that. I love that for Caleb Williams. I think he has a great cast of playmakers around him as well. You mentioned Keenan Allen coming over, and granted, Keenan Allen's 32, and I'll talk a little bit more about Keenan Allen in a second. But Keenan Allen coming over, big, wide receiver that can, still stretch the field and go up and grab the football if he can't do anything else. You got Rome. How do you pronounce it? Odunze?
Rome Odunze.
Odunze, yeah, that's what I thought it was. You got Rome Odunze there coming in as well. I think he's projected to do really, really well this season. I kind of could see that. And then, of course, DJ Moore. So 3 solid wide receivers, I think, for him in this passing attack. And we'd be remiss without mentioning Cole Kmet. Up and coming tight end. Cole Kmet played really, really well with Justin Fields last year at the helm of this offense. Then even out the backfield, you got DeAndre Swift coming, being there, Khalil Herbert there, Roshan Johnson there as well. And when I went back and looked at it last year, it was 14 different quarterbacks who threw for 22 touchdowns or more last season. Your boy CJ Stroud was one of them, 23 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. And I do kind of feel like if you go through and look at the Bears' schedule, they play some of the better rush defenses, but the pass defenses are not as great this season that they're going to play against. So you got Carolina there, you got the Rams there, you got the Indianapolis Colts there, the Detroit Lions, great as they were on defense, at stopping the run, they really struggled against the pass. Even the 49ers are opposite of that, but you got the Minnesota Vikings. So I do like for the Chicago Bears team that I think that they're going to just kind of unleash Caleb Williams, and I do think that he'll go over this 22 passing touchdowns. I'm thinking more along the lines of 24, 25 passing touchdowns. So I don't even hate the 22.5, but I'll take the 21.5 for Caleb Williams to go over here.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that you mentioned there, right? That just jumps right off the bat is the schedule of pass defenses that they're going to face, right? They face 8 different opponents that rank 20th or worse when it comes to pass defense projected for this upcoming season. So that's always a plus. And it's just a pure upgrade at the wide receiver positions, what you mentioned from last year to this year, right? Last year, it was DJ Moore. It was Cole Kmet who came onto the scene after that. They really didn't have a consistent wide receiver for this Chicago Bears group. They add Keenan Allen, right? You add Rome Odunze, said take a step forward. DJ Moore got paid the money in this offseason, and now you upgrade at the quarterback position. And they drafted Caleb Williams number 1 for a reason, right? You had Justin Fields, who second half of the year, looked pretty good for this team. But I think we all kind of knew that with Caleb Williams coming out of USC, that he was going to be, the future of this franchise and the quarterback moving forward. So I think they did a fantastic job of adding those, weapons around Caleb Williams. And it's something similar to what you mentioned about CJ Stroud last year, that, maybe the weapons weren't as great last year for CJ Stroud. I mean, we saw Nico Collins come onto the scene, Tank Dell, and other guys that filled in. But again, when you have a reliable guy like Keenan Allen, who was a target machine with Justin Herbert, with reliable hands, some of the best hands in the league. I like what I've seen from the Bears offseason here, and I think that Caleb Williams, will be that guy for this team going forward. So I think he definitely can get the touchdowns here. Maybe you see this Bears team because of at least their secondary may not be as improved as we hope to be. That they may turn into some shootouts here. So I think the passing touchdown will definitely be there for a guy like Caleb Williams for this upcoming season. So could not talk you off of that. All right, before we get over to my first player prop here for this division, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Hey, if you go 8-0 over on Underdog Fantasy, you can win 325 extra entry or play their fantasy football right now the right way with their Best Ball. Best Ball Mania is live with 15 million in prizes, and Underdog just launched their season-long college football projections. Higher and lower for your favorite college football players, and you can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. All right, Chris, let me get into my first player prop here for the NFC North division. Obviously, we'll start with the quarterback here. I actually have two quarterbacks in this division, again, like I did for the AFC North. But I'll say with the themes of the over. And Jared Goff, I'm going to go over on his 4,500 passing yards. And when I was looking at the first thing that jumped off to me about the Lions' upcoming schedule, and let me preface it with this, that there's always all that talk about Jared Goff on how he does in indoor stadiums versus outdoor stadiums, and when he gets to the colder weather, right? But it amazed me, and I was kind of in awe when you look at their schedule this upcoming season for the Detroit Lions, that 14 of their 17 games this season are being played indoors. 14 of the 17. So we know, obviously, Ford Field being indoors, but you take a look at the other games that they are playing, in particular on the road, right? Arizona, indoor stadium. Dallas, indoor stadium. Minnesota twice, being in the division, indoor stadium. Obviously, Green Bay will be outside for the road game, obviously. Sorry, Minnesota, one game on the road within the division. Texans, NRG Stadium, indoors. Indianapolis Colts, indoors. And obviously the Bears, being outdoors as well. And then the San Francisco 49ers as well. So, again, and him going back to California, he always, maybe you could say performs well there as well. So that's one thing that jumped off. But and when you talk about this Detroit Lions team, right, and something similar, we'll talk about when we get to the AFC South, is that they were able to retain their offensive coordinator, right? Ben Johnson. His name was popping up in a lot of the open vacancies for the jobs that were available this past offseason. But he decided to come back and be with this Detroit Lions team. And I think that's only going to help a guy like Jared Goff. But you take a look at his first this first 3 seasons with the Detroit Lions back in 2021, 14 games. Okay, 32-45. Didn't quite get there, but he played in all 17 games over the last 2 seasons for the Detroit Lions. In 2022, 4,438 passing yards, and then last season, 4,575.5 passing yards. You just take a look at the skill positions, right? Sam Laporta last season was absolutely fantastic for this team. We talked a lot about during the regular season, Amon-Ra St. Brown on his receptions, or him being a touchdown catcher, or his receiving yards to go over. You have that. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think it's going to be a great pass-catching running back for this team as well. You can throw David Montgomery's name in there as well. The one guy we're all going to look out for, whose issues or I know he had the gambling stuff with Jameson Williams and the injuries that he's been dealing with. Hopefully that's all in the past now. That's another weapon that they're going to have for this Detroit Lions offense. So it's all setting up for Jared Goff to have another big season, and this Detroit Lions offense is just continue firing on all cylinders. I think this number, it being at 4,000, it's a little bit, I think, low for Jared Goff just being in the system. And again, like we mentioned, with the games that they'll have on the road that are also going to be indoors, I think that's only beneficial for a guy like Jared Goff. And I'll add this one more note before I hand it over to you here, Chris. I kind of like Jared Goff around 13-1, 14-1 to be the passing yards leader for this upcoming season, just based on what I just mentioned about a lot of those games being indoors this season, just purely having those weapons. So yeah, I think this is one of my favorite ones that I've probably given out, or the 4 divisions right now here, Chris. Jared Goff over 4,500 passing yards for the Detroit Lions this upcoming season.
Yeah, I looked at what you looked at, Munaf, and as far as how you started the handicap and those 14 of 17 games being played indoors, and we probably should have had the actual numbers. Jared Goff plays tremendously better when he's playing. When he's playing, on turf versus indoors versus outdoors. So I love that, I love also that that they just get off the hot starts. I think Jared Goff is one of the quarterbacks that has a tremendous win percentage in the regular season as far as first season games. I remember last year we did the Propcast, and it was Detroit in Arrowhead, and they went in there and got the win. So yeah, I couldn't talk you off of that. I love that point. I also think where was I going to go with that? I think it's a really, really good look. You mentioned the 4,500 that he had, almost 4,600 that he had last season, and you hate to mention it, but if Jahmyr Gibbs is dealing with a hamstring injury, granted they have David Montgomery in the backfield as well, but that's one less option for them to have. As far as being able to run the ball successfully. So hopefully, that's not too much, but that could also work in your favor. Also with a compromise. We won't call him injured for the whole season, but we know hamstring injuries are one of those that linger a lot. So hopefully he's not compromised, but that could also be a significant part of the handicap as well. With him just getting hurt on Monday.
So I was able to find something here. This dates back to January of 2024. So he's played 43 games in indoors, has a straight up record of 23-19. Completion percentage is 67.4, and in those 43 games for 10,741 passing yards, 75 touchdowns, and 24 interceptions. Outdoors, 66 games, so 23 more games that he's played outdoors. The completion percentage dips by 5%. It drops to 62.4. And obviously, playing 23 more games outdoors, he has more passing yards, 17,171. So if he played maybe 20 more games, I think that maybe those numbers even out there a little bit. But the one thing that really jumps off is interceptions, right? 24 interceptions indoors, 52 outdoors for Jared Goff. So I really love this for Jared Goff for this upcoming season. I think this is going to be another team that, hey, honestly, Chris, I could see this team being the number 1 seed in the NFC. I honestly do. I think there's, I'll try to dig that number up, but I think this is going to be another big year for the Detroit Lions and just really picking up where they left off. I think the improvement that we'll need to see from this Lions team is going to be from Aaron Glenn in that defense. That I think should be improved this upcoming season. All right, Chris, let's get to player prop number 2, man. What do you got?
So let's keep that same theme going. If I actually like Amon-Ra as well. So I know you're already on Jared Goff. I think it kind of aligns well. I'm going over on his passing, on his receiving touchdowns. This number comes in just a tad bit too low for my liking. 8.5 out of maybe, right? But 7.5, I can get behind 7.5 touchdowns for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I need him to get 8. You go back, and the first thing I looked at was targets in the red zone last season. He ended up with 25, which of course led the team. That was 9 more than Sam Laporta. Both, in my opinion, both of the two kind of overperformed and exceeded a lot of people's expectation. But I think Amon-Ra I could think he could potentially get 10 touchdowns this year. This is a guy going into his 4th year with Detroit. You mentioned all the success that Jared Goff has, indoors. Amon-Ra is going to be indoors as well. 14 of the 17 games that he's going to play in. I mentioned it just a little bit, but if Jahmyr Gibbs is hampered by that hamstring, that's more opportunities for, probably the most dynamic playmaker that they have on the field, and that being Amon-Ra St. Brown. I also wanted to mention, the trust that he has with head coach Dan Campbell. You watch the receiver, And you just see the relationship that these two guys have built. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a very big, strong, physical wide receiver that is not just going to go to the ground when he gets when he gets tackled. So I love all of that. There's also the idea that Goff, he targeted wide receivers 55% of the times on early downs. And the Lions were ranked number 2 in wide receiver success on early down targets last season. A lot of that had to do with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who ended up with, north of 110 catches last season. So the Lions, like you said, I had also mentioned them, they're also set to nearly play every game. Like you said, 14 out of 17 to play indoors. And Jared Goff is just a lot more, decorated and a lot more efficient. Both throwing the ball for yards and touchdowns when he's playing indoors. Amon-Ra also had, for what it's worth, he ended up with 164 targets last season and cleared 10 touchdowns last season. And that was just, like I said, his third year. So going into year number 4, with same offensive coordinator, same coach, same quarterback, same system, same scheme. I do think that Amon-Ra, and with Jameis being there now, I do think that could potentially take a little bit of pressure off him, because I expect Sam Laporta in his second year to play really, really well. I thought his numbers were a tad bit low, but I went Amon-Ra a little bit over, Sam Laporta. And I'll take Amon-Ra, to give me 8 touchdowns this season. Over 7.5, minus 128 is the number.
Yeah, we didn't have the expectation of this turning into a Lions podcast, but here we are. I went the other way. I took Laporta on his receptions to go over. The number's 79.5. And for a lot of things that you did mention, right, that 2 guys last year, 164 targets for Amon-Ra St. Brown, 120 for Sam Laporta. The next closest was, I believe, Jahmyr Gibbs, a running back out of the backfield, 71. But that's also without Jamison Williams, who only played in 12 games last year, expecting him to take a leap forward, which kind of means that, well, that opens up opportunities for the other guys even more, right? Because we know the speed that Williams has, and that they're going to have to pay, our defenses are going to have to pay attention to him as well. But also felt like that last season, if you watch this Lions offense, I felt like that Sam Laporta kind of turned into a security blanket for Jared Goff. And I think that, some of that may just continue here. I think that if he gets into another season with 100 plus targets to Sam Laporta, I think he'd get over this number of 79.5 receptions. And again, like we always mention, shop around when you're playing these overs, get the best number, because there was a huge discrepancy when I was looking at this number for Sam Laporta on his receptions here. So let me just quickly go back and look. So this number is available on FanDuel at 79.5, where DraftKings has this at 82.5. So a difference of 3 receptions there. But again, it could mean something at the end of the season, where who knows, that the Lions are having a great season. They've already locked up the number 1 seed possibly. And I'm just thinking out loud here that they probably don't need, their guys to be out there for that week 18 game, that final 17th game. So again, there's a lot of things that you did mention here. I expect this Lions team to continue throwing the football with Jared Goff, getting the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, getting it to Sam Laporta. I think those 2 guys are going to get a lot of the target shares for this upcoming season here. But 79.5, I could see Sam Laporta, barring injury, of course, walking into 80 receptions here, Chris. So I went over 79.5 for Sam Laporta on his receptions here.
Yeah, I love him. You mentioned a couple key words. One, security blanket, right? Like when Amon-Ra is running those deep routes, right, and he's trying to get behind the corner in the safety, he's going to be checking down to his guy. The Propcast is a very tight end friendly prop show. We love tight ends because we love them, because quarterbacks love them, right?
Yeah,
and they need those checkdowns. So I thought Sam Laporta, as I mentioned already, I thought he overexceeded expectations last season. But if you're telling me that Jared Goff, again, going back to hammering that point, if he's going to play 14 of his 17 games indoors, with the same coach, with the same quarterback, with, same offensive weapons, then it's going to be difficult for me to want to fade him. So I do like Sam Laporta to go over him. I think that's a really good look.
Love it. All right, before we get into our third player props here for the NFC North division, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Rhythm. Football season is here, and the college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting models or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You decide what stats matter the most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists. Rhythm already has you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And don't forget, Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you'll feel if you win your office survivor pool but didn't enter the Circa Survivor. And if you don't have a trip booked for Las Vegas yet before football season, Ultimate Contest Weekend, it's a great time to go hang out. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sports book in the world, August 22nd through August 24th. Use promo code SGP15, that's SGP15, to save 15% off on your hotel room for sign-up weekend. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with a proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save $50 off their proxy service with promo code SGP. Again, proxy.footballcontest.com to save you $50 with promo code SGP. All right, Chris, let's get into player prop number 3 here, my friend. What do you got for the people?
So I'm going back to Chicago, and I had to find one under. I'm going Keenan Allen. I'm fading the old guy here, and I'm a big fan of Keenan Allen. I really am. I think he's had an amazing career out in San Diego before going to LA, with the in his tenure with the Chargers. But Keenan Allen has actually looked pretty slow and unexplosive, at training camp so far from everything that I'm reading. You don't tend to get faster as the season goes on. You tend to slow down as the season goes on. So he's already looking like he's losing that breakaway speed. And I kind of expect the production from this wide receiver group to be from a variety of talent. When I go back and I look at the projections, this wide receiving core, and one of the reasons why I like Caleb Williams to go over his passing touchdowns so much at 21.5 is because this wide receiving core is pretty deep. They actually rank top 5 in a lot of different projection models for the season. So if I can get Keenan Allen under 825.5 receiving yards, that's almost 1,000 yards receiving. I do think that he takes, a step back. He's 32 years old. Last season, and I think the number is pretty telling, this guy had 1,243 receiving yards last season. Now the books has his number set 400 yards less than what it was last season. I think that's pretty glaring there. I think he's due for some major regression. We already talked about, Rome Odunze.
Roma Odunze.
Odunze. We talked about Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, of course, signing that big contract and what he means to that franchise. You still got Cochran. And not that the wide receivers, not that the quarterback is the same, because of course it's not with Caleb Williams, but last season they only had one receiver, which was DJ Moore, go over 826 receiving yards. So I do like Keenan Allen. I think he's at the tail end of his career. He's starting it'll start to wind down for him here. So I'll fade Keenan Allen here and go under his 825.5 pass receiving yards here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? What you mentioned about Keenan Allen, just looking at his numbers. Health is going to start to be concerned for him because this is now his 13th year, if I'm not mistaken, going in his first season with Chicago. Sorry, 12th year. But let's go back to the Chargers, right? For Keenan Allen, Chargers, ever since I think Justin Herbert got there, Chris, they were dealing with a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position, right? So it had to be Keenan Allen who had to be the guy for that first couple seasons. When Justin Herbert was there, last 2 seasons, he's played in only 10 games and 13 games last year. But even last year, in 13 games, he still ended up with 108 receptions and 150 targets. But it's also because that there wasn't a lot there offensively for the, especially at the wide receiving group, because there was a lot of injuries that they were dealing with. It's a lot what we mentioned, and what you mentioned when we talked about Caleb Williams is that now they have a very deep wide receiving group. And Keenan Allen's not going to be, he's not the number one target. We could maybe even sit here and talk about he might be even number 3 behind DJ Moore, who's number 1 for sure. Roma Dunze. And then let's not forget, right? You mentioned Cole Kmet is there as well. So I think that, there may be some limitations as far as target shares and the number of targets that he's going to get. And again, health is always a concern right now for Keenan Allen because, you're one hamstring away from missing anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. And I think that at least over the last 2 seasons, what we've seen from Keenan Allen, that's what's kind of lingered him. But I know, like we mentioned last year, he got over these numbers, but again, he was really the only guy that was really there offensively when it came to that wide receiving group. So, just based on there only being one football, I think that Keenan Allen may just have to take a step back here for the Chicago Bears now being in a new system, of course, as well, and having a rookie quarterback as well, where he was just, used to having Justin Herbert for the past several seasons while he was there. So everything's really brand new for Keenan Allen. All right, for my last player prop here, Chris, we talked about the JJ McCarthy news early in the episode, at the top of the episode. And that told me, number one, that Sam Darnold's going to be the starter for the Minnesota Vikings. Immediately when I heard that JJ McCarthy news, I went and looked at the under passing yards for Sam Darnold, because there is no way on God's green earth that this guy is going to be in all 17 games for this Minnesota Vikings offense. And look, if he goes out there and proves me wrong and has a year where he has a career year, because this honestly feels like, Chris, that this opportunity may be it for Sam Darnold. And I don't expect him. And I'll keep this in, but I don't expect him to play more than, and I'm being generous here, I think more than 13 games for the Minnesota Vikings. Because again, number one, you have Justin Jefferson there. And if Justin Jefferson starts saying to the front office and the general manager, like, dude, this guy's not it, you need to bring in another quarterback here for me, they're going to go out and do that. And again, Sam Darnold, in his career, the most games he's played when he was with the New York Jets, 13. And he hasn't exceeded that at any point in his career. So he's turned into more obviously a journeyman for the Minnesota Vikings. So right now, this number is posted on FanDuel, 3,475.5 passing yards for Sam Darnold. Chris, he's exceeded 3,000 passing yards just once in his career, which was back in 2019, where he barely got over that number of 3,024 passing yards. But I think there is another move coming here, obviously, for the Minnesota Vikings. Do they trade maybe for a guy like Jameis Winston? Or maybe if it is Tyler Huntley, we talked about with the Cleveland Browns. But I just don't think that Sam Darnold is going to be out there for all 17 games, let alone even 14 to 13 games for this Minnesota Vikings team. So under 3,475.5 passing yard for Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, I'm daring you to go out there and prove me wrong. If you do, hats off to you, because you had a career year, but you've never done it in your career. And here we are, Sam Darnold under 3,475.5 passing yards here, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, this makes a lot of sense. I think your handicap is spot on. We don't expect them to be out there. I mean, they got Nick Mullins
Yeah.
at the backup quarterback right now, so probably want to get another QB. But the other part of that too, we knew when they moved away from Kirk Cousins that it was just, you hate to say rebuild in the NFL, but I mean that's realistically what we were looking at, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm pretty sure that's a little tough for a guy like Justin Jefferson, one of the, if not the best wide receiver, the second, third best wide receiver in the league. It's probably hard for him to hear, but yeah, absolutely. That's what we're doing here. So as you mentioned, it would take for him to have, he would have to have some type of comeback player of the year, award that he'd be given to, to go over these 3,500, get close to 3,500 passing yards this season. And then you also mentioned, like you said, the Jordan, like we mentioned earlier, Jordan Addison not being there. TJ Hawkinson, of course, still listed as out. He's still dealing he's likely to be ready for week 1, but could miss. And that could also just tamper with how successful he is. So I mean, who's he throwing the ball to outside of Jordan? JJ as well. If I think this wide receiver group is not that great, especially when you take away Jordan Addison. So I'm right along. I'm right along with you. I think the best thing that this team could do is try to manage the clock and hand the ball off to Aaron Jones at the backfield. Hopefully he can get 5 yards of pop and keep that defense on the sideline. But it's not looking good for Minnesota. This team is not projected to do well. Only 6.5 wins, I think, is what they projected, and also projected to finish last in the division. Typically, you start to see fans start to get a little rowdy, and head coaches and some of those general managers start to pull the string on some of those guys. So I'll be telling this one. I think that's a very, very solid look. One to face Sam Darnold. I hadn't really put too much thought. Didn't even look at the number, but I like what you mentioned here. I'll be going under, what is it, 34.75.5?
It's on FanDuel right now. Let me confirm the number because I think that's what I put into our sheet, and that's exactly what I saw. Okay. 3,475.5 passing yards. You can get that right now over on FanDuel. So and I was just scouring right now to see if there's any news that maybe in Minnesota signed another quarterback or traded for another quarterback.
They still. I see. So Darnold will be first, and of course JJ McCarthy goes on IR. But Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall, look like I guess we cut one of those guys. I'm not sure, but it's a little messed up right now. If we won't see Kirk Cousins type numbers from any quarterback, I think it's safe to say on this Minnesota Vikings roster this year.
All right, so those are 3 player props each for this NFC North division. Chris, any honorable mentions that you were looking at for this division? I know we didn't talk a whole heck of a lot about the Packers there, but anything that else stood out to you?
Or maybe I wanted to get your thought process, on Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, I think, was sitting at 8. I want to say it's 825 is one the number that I saw most recently. 825 rushing yards. Of course, he had a very productive year. I think led the league in rushing 2 years ago when he was in Oakland. But then last season kind of just bottomed out, And now, you have great expectations for him, of course, because he's coming in to replace Aaron Jones, and you're gonna need some type of a running attack. But I was looking through, if in Minnesota, Green Bay actually plays, I think, the 3rd most difficult rushing defense throughout the season. So that kind of lends itself to me that, you've given Jordan Love the money, and, maybe Matt LaFleur kind of opens it up just a tad bit even more. I know that they had a pretty balanced attack after, that light bulb kind of went off for Jordan Love last season. So I wanted to kind of figure out a way to potentially fade Josh Jacobs. I didn't quite get there, but he was the one guy that was on my honorable mentions list. Just wanting to either take his touchdowns under, because I think they'll be in more shootout type games, or just looking at and I think they'll play really good defenses, or taking his yards to go under, just thinking that he can't turn back, and that the hand of time, and that that 2022 season was a little fluky, I guess.
Yeah, and I was looking at Josh Jacobs as well, but then I went and looked at the depth chart for the Green Bay Packers, and second in line is A.J. Dillon, and they're still hoping they get something out of A.J. Dillon, and I'm not sure that's going to come into fruition for this team, which kind of makes sense that, they maybe let Jordan Love throw the football a little bit more than rely on Josh Jacobs. The one thing I do like about Josh Jacobs is that he is a pass-catching back, and that if you wanted to back Josh Jacobs in some way, it's maybe the receptions, or maybe it's receiving yards or something like that. But I don't know. I couldn't get there with him. I feel like the numbers, Easy's mentioning in the chat, 925.5. I think it's consensus right now for Josh Jacobs, or essentially asking him to have a 1,000-yard season, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that. Number one, in Green Bay, where that maybe the turf monster gets you a little bit there, playing 8 to 9 home games, and also what you mentioned, the schedule of rush defenses that they are going to play this upcoming season. So I don't know, man. I feel like this number, it makes sense. It's just the fact that, if he has a couple fumbles here or there, that do they go with AJ Dillon being the workhorse at that point? I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that. He is coming off the worst season of his career by far. We only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. Maybe a lot of that had to do with the lack of offensive line there for the Raiders. But then you go back to 2022 year where he had, 1,653 rushing yards, 4.9 yards per attempt, 97.2 rushing yards per game, where that drastically fell by 36 yards, 35 yards, I should say, the exact number for him last season. So I could understand the case of taking the under there, that maybe it would be running back by committee. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about the guys that are a little bit further down that depth chart in Marshawn Lloyd at third, and then Emmanuel Wilson. We'll even see if those guys even make the roster. But I would lean towards the under for Josh Jacobs. I'm not sure that, again, he can duplicate what he did 2 seasons ago. And they're not even asking him to do that, because it's almost a little more than half of what the projection is for this upcoming season. So I looked at it, but I think I'm more comfortable with Josh Jacobs being that pass catching back. So I think that when the regular season does roll around, Chris, that I maybe be looking at his receptions or his receiving yards to go over on a weekly basis. But as far as season long, I'm not sure. I couldn't get there for Josh Jacobs. Yeah, I didn't see anything else that really jumped out to me. I think the ones that we did talk about covered most of it. I love that the Jared Goff one we talked about. The Minnesota quarterback situation there. Talked a lot about, the Chicago Bears as well. So I think we covered it pretty well. Did you have anything else that you were considering in this division before we get to best bets?
No, I think we did a pretty good job. I want your thoughts on Jordan Love. Of course, he started the season a little cold, and of course, he got super hot. They end up going to Dallas and knocking off the Cowboys in the playoffs. And now we get, the inflated lines because, that second half of the season looked so well. And I know that they had a touchdown percentage that was like the best since 2000, I think. Like they were converting at a very, very high rate, just getting touchdowns, which led to him getting a big contract. Those numbers, it feel like we talked about inflation. I feel like that's the kind of the name of this show, the theme of this show. How are you feeling about Jordan Love numbers? Any of them intrigue you at all for wanting to take the over or the under, or you kind of feel like they're priced right? Do we expect regression, or do you think he's the real deal?
So it gives me pause to bet on an over for a guy that just got paid the amount of money that he did, right? Because I'm not saying that he doesn't have anything to go out and prove, but he also has to go up and live up to the contract that the Packers paid him. And the Packers fan base has been spoiled by the quarterback play they've gotten over the past 2 decades with Brett Favre, with Aaron Rodgers, and now with Jordan Love. His number's at 3,225.5 is the best number I see if you want to bet the over. I think he's a capable, more than capable quarterback, right? I mean, wouldn't be surprised if he does finish, top 7, top 10 in QBR this upcoming season. He did finish the last season with just over 4,100 plus passing yards, 32 passing touchdowns as well. He also had 4 rushing touchdowns. And like you mentioned, something just clicked for him and Matt LaFleur in that second half of the season, where he was efficient. And if you kind of just look at the completion numbers, and the completion percentage, that's what really stands out to me about Jordan Love. I feel like they do have a tougher schedule of past defenses that they are going to face this upcoming season. But I think for Jordan Love, I think he's definitely more than capable. I like the depth that they do have at the wide receiving group. With Octavian Wicks, with Christian Watson, with Romeo Doubs there as well. Josh Jacobs, like I mentioned, he's a pretty good pass catching back there as well. But I do think that, again, there is a possibility that he could get over his number for his passing yards. But I think I agree with Easy as well on his interceptions. And I think that that's a number that if you want to fade Jordan Love, probably could be looking at his interceptions to go over, because last season he had how many interceptions? He only had
11.
those 2 in the playoffs, but 11, yeah, during the regular season. So if they are a little bit more pass happy, Chris, that's probably a number that he does over for his interceptions for this upcoming season. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this NFC North division, Chris. Let's wrap it up with a best bet for the ones that we did give out here. I'll let you do it off. Where are you going with your best bet?
I'm gonna fade the old guy, man. I'm going under on Keenan Allen, under his 825 and a half receiving yards. I just think that, like I think you mentioned 13th season, which I didn't even mention. I just mentioned that he was old, 32-year-old, 13 years in the NFL. He's had, really, really great seasons for, the Chargers team. But, with like I said, the number coming down, he had 1,243 passing receiving yards last season. That the number is set 400 yards lower than it was. Brand new quarterback, brand new. I mean, he's on a whole different time zone. He's not even on the West Coast anymore. New offensive coordinator, new quarterback, a bunch of different, talented wide receivers around him with, DJ Moore and Cole Kmet and all of those other guys that they have that can make explosive plays as well. So I do think that Keenan Allen will continue to be a big touchdown target. We know that you can just throw him the ball up in the, close to the end zone and he can go down. He can come down with it. So I was afraid to fade the touchdowns, but I do think that he goes under the 825 and a half receiving yards. That'll be my best bet for the show. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, couldn't talk you off. Again, we talked about extensively the Chicago Bears and how they have that wide receiving depth now. And again, Keenan Allen, maybe option 3 there, maybe. But again, DJ Moore, again, clear cut number 1. We talked about Cole Kmet there as well. So I can see it. Again, injury could derail it for Keenan Allen, as it has over the past 2 seasons. I know he got over the number last year, but he only played in 13 games for the LA Chargers last season. So yeah, definitely love that one. All right, for my best bet, it just makes too much sense for me not to do it. I'm just going to take the under on Sam Darnold, 3,475 and a half passing yards. Sam Darnold, go out there and prove me wrong, my man, because you haven't done it in your career. You've gotten over 3,000 passing yards just once in your career. That was back in, I think, 2019. He hasn't played more than 13 regular season games in his career. And again, I don't expect him to be playing more than 12, 13 games this upcoming season for the Minnesota Vikings, despite the injury to JJ McCarthy and him missing the entire season. So, yeah, you have Nick Mullins back there. Yeah, you have Jaren Hall. But I also think that the Minnesota Vikings may go out and make one more move to bring in a backup quarterback there for the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm curious to see, Chris, where is Teddy Bridgewater? Is he retired or is he even in the league anymore?
I feel like he was on a roster when I was reading something. Let's see. Good old Teddy H2O at Detroit Lions.
Oh, he's with Detroit.
Detroit Lions.
Okay.
I remember reading his name. Let me just.
Yeah, he's with Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Look, yeah, Easy saying he retired. I thought he retired as well. Yeah, he said he retired last season. Look, I just think there's going to be a move made for a backup quarterback to come in there behind Sam Darnold if they aren't sold on Nick Mullins. I think there's a lot of options out there. I mean, I think in Houston there's a prime example alone. Davis Mills is an option right there for the Minnesota Vikings. Again, it's just me saying, go out and prove me wrong, Sam Darnold. You haven't done this in your career. You haven't played more than 13 games in a regular season. 3,475 and a half passing yards. I think there's quarterbacks in this league, if we looked at the numbers for this upcoming season, that it's more than some of these other quarterbacks that are more than capable. He's projected, Chris, to get more passing yards than Deshaun Watson. I'll leave it at that. So my best bet, Sam Darnold, under 3,475 and a half passing yards. And you could get that on at FanDuel right now. for Mr. Sam Darnold.
I like it. I also think, just real quick before we wrap up, I also think that it's something too that's only being available on FanDuel, right? Like the other books are like, you know what? We're not going to hang too many Sam Darnold lines up. So I'm right there with you, man. I mean, he's going to need, Justin Jefferson to be, Justin Jefferson 2.0, which, may be even impossible to get close to this number. I'm right there with you. I'm going to be playing this one with you as well,
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that number was there, that it was available at FanDuel. And it is still there, 3,475.5 passing yards to go under. And his passing touchdowns, just for reference, are at 20.5. I don't see a number for his interceptions yet. I'm not sure they can set that high enough for Mr. Sam Darnold. So we'll leave it at that. All right, that completes halfway through of our season-long player props for the upcoming season. We'll be back next week to tackle 2 more divisions for our season player props. So look out for us then. Tuesdays and Thursdays is a schedule right around 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to come join us live on the Propcast YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed to the Propcast YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. Really helps us grow the show, and we'll be here every single week during the regular season for the NFL. For our weekly player props. So join us then live if you want. But you also can obviously get it on audio form, whether it's on Spotify or whether that is on Apple. Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Nah, man. Enjoy, preseason football and everything else that you're betting on. Bet responsibly as always. And AFC South on the 20th. I'm excited to jump into AFC South as well.
Yep, 100%. We'll be back next week for the AFC South, so look out for us then. Make sure you guys follow Chris on Twitter. That's at ChrisBeCappinn with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.